Mr. Johns, you ready?
We're ready.
All right. Christopher Larson, are you out there?
We are ready to go, sir.
Okay, I hear you. Christopher Larson is remote this evening. He is on very important parental duty. So he says we're live, we're ready to go. So welcome everybody to our second meeting in June. And we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. Our invocation is by Micah Beckwith with Life Church. Micah, please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you and we thank you for being a God who is a God of liberty. Lord, as we come up on Independence Day, we just want to give you praise for the independence and freedoms that we have in this great nation. Lord, thank you for Westfield. Thank you for this community and for the leaders you have raised up. Father, I pray that you give them great wisdom tonight and boldness and courage to do what you say is right. Father, we want to be a community where your Spirit reigns. And Father, we ask that the goodness that you are would just flood through our streets and our homes and our schools, Lord, and let Westfield be a shining city on a hill, so that all can see how good you are, Lord, and the prosperity and the blessings that you pour out on people who follow in your ways. Lord, thank you for what you're doing here this summer as well. And Lord, we just ask that you just continue to be with us tonight. It's in Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
President Johns, would you care to run the meeting tonight?
I will, Mayor Cook. Kim, could you please note the presence of quorum?
Joe Edwards. Here. Cindy Spoljaric. Here. Scott Fry.
Here.
Mike Johns.
Here.
Scott Willis.
Here.
Troy Patton.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
I'm here too.
Jake?
Jake. Oh, Jake Gilbert.
Okay. There are, as far as I know, there are no changes to the agenda this evening. Our first order of business then will be the approval of the meeting minutes from June 12th, 2023. Councilors, have you had a chance to review the minutes, and are there any questions on those minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion made by Councilor Spoljaric, seconded by Councilor Fry. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Cindy Spoljaric. Yes. Motion carries 7-0.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of a claims docket for this evening, June 26, 2023. Councilors, have you had a chance to review the claims docket, and do you have any questions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the claims docket for this evening?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Councilor Patton, seconded by Councilor Willis. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Cindy Spoljaric.
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Our first item of miscellaneous business this evening would be Lisa and Mark Hall asking for permission from the council to place an outdoor food pantry on the property at City Hall. Lisa, Mark?
Is it turned on? Good evening, council. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor. Council President, I know many of you individually. We are here on behalf of feedingteam.org, which is a local Hamilton County non-perishable outdoor 24/7, no questions asked food pantry. We have a couple of brochures. I had sent a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation to Marla. I don't know that that's made it to you or not. If it hasn't, I'm happy to send it to you individually. Just let us know. We're here originally at the request of a young lady named Hannah Semlar, who was on behalf of the Girl Scouts and the blessing box that used to be here. And she reached out and said, hey, I see what you guys are doing. I would like to know if you would be able to put a feeding team pantry here at the town hall. We are making a move west We have a number of locations we're in conversation with today to put pantries at Westfield. We have one at the Lutheran Church on 191st Street presently, in conversations with Trinity Baptist Church once they get through the new sanctuary construction, and then with Open Door and help me. Oh, the Get Go, the gas station out on Stairway 32 has expressed interest in having one, and then they'll do food drives wrapped around those. The concept of the food pantries is just like the little libraries that you'll see. It's take what you need, give what you can, an honor system. Although we put a little twist to it, these are corporate sponsored by our businesses, so we fund them to the tune of about 10,400 meals every month go out, primarily through Hamilton County. We have a few outliers, Seymour, we have some in Anderson, in Jay County, one in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is a whole nother story, and one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Two in Kokomo, that's right, 2 in Kokomo. But the impetus is Hamilton County. There are 24 of them in Noblesville, and now we're making our move. Carmel has 2, if I remember right. We only have 1 in Westfield. We're in conversations with a number of other locations as we move west. These are stocked with non-perishables. That's normally one of the questions that we get. But because it's an honor system, from time to time, we get very good-natured people that will put a fresh pumpkin pie in them, or cowboy steaks, or meatballs, or yogurt, so the volunteers take them out on a regular basis. They're attended to at least twice a week through a volunteer group. Lisa runs the volunteer group. We have about 100 volunteers now that work with us countywide, and we have other pantries that are actually adopted by churches, by government locations. We have them on county fairgrounds, we have them in schools, we have them at high school administration buildings, and we're here tonight to answer any questions and ask permission to put one wherever the old blessing box was, or really wherever you see fit, that's a good fit. It won't cost the council anything. We provide these as part of the charity. We are a 501c3, started in 2019, got our 501c3 in 22. Today it's 52 of these pantries outside, 10,400 meals a month are now going through them, and we expect 4 more to go, and we're in conversations with as many as 9 more for here in Westfield. DeLong Landscaping, Open Door with Mr. Waniger, Trinity Baptist, and we have one at the Lutheran Church already. We had initial agreement with the YMCA to put one over at the temporary YMCA location, and they wanted to wait until they got the new build. And frankly, Cheryl and I haven't, Clifford and I haven't talked again to see about putting one at the new location. That's also on the to-do list. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I can send you a presentation as well, but that's the ask, is to be able to put one somewhere here and then get your direction as to where you would want it.
Thank you. Councilors, questions? Mark, as I understand it, you've met with Chris McConnell about placing the pantry here on this site, is that?
I have not.
I think Marla did.
I think Marla did.
I think Marla did on her behalf.
Chris, do you have a comment on that?
Hi, Chris, I'm Mark. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Council, I worked with Hannah Semler on her silver project to put the original one in here, and unfortunately it fell in a little disarray and wasn't tended to as it should, and Marla reached out to me and I had a conversation with her as well as with Councilor Spoljaric. I think this is a wonderful program. It was used while it was here. I think there's a better location that Marla might have pointed out in her email. But in short, it was used. It is a wonderful community asset, and I would recommend or champion what they're doing and say it would be a wonderful asset to have back here.
As I recall in that email, I think I read that there's a place, a location that you had recommended or you agreed to? Or?
Marla, I think, recommended, instead of it being right outside of the doors here, being more between this building and the old historic barn next door. There's a bench back there, if I remember correctly, and it might be a more appropriate place than on this side of the building. But yeah, I would recommend it over there as opposed to over here.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
The downside has really been the sun, the afternoon sun hitting that one. That's just a really not a good idea for any food products. So I think having it in an area that's going to be shaded most of the time would be good.
I agree.
And you'll find the food will move through these rapidly. something will not stay on the shelf very long. And if it does, one of our volunteers that mans the pantry would remove something if it stays in there a length of time.
If I may, these are targeted towards what we call gap families. So when we did the original data analysis, we looked for families of 4 or more mouths making between $40,000 and $45,000 a year. And we plotted a map where we try to locate the pantries near those families. Are they used by homeless? Absolutely. Are they used by migrant workers and indigent? Absolutely. But they're targeted towards families that get to Friday and something goes bump in the night and they don't know how they're going to feed their kids until they get paid on Monday. That's what they're targeted for. You'll see people that will come and they'll look both ways and they'll make sure no one's watching out of embarrassment. They're just as easily could be a donation. People could be perceived as donating to them as opposed to taking from them. So we see folks pull up in late model cars. They're wearing have a nice iPhone and they have their nails all done and yet they're taking a bag full of meals to take home to their kids. That's what it's targeted for. The data shows after the pandemic, there's 44,000 in Hamilton County food challenged. So that means they don't know where one of their next 3 meals is coming from. So as we move west, then we'll move north to Sheridan. We have one in Sheridan now as well, 2 in Carmel. So our hope is that we move to Westfield next, and then we'll go north to Sheridan. The other question that you should probably think about is insurance. We do have insurance on every pantry, and I'm happy to provide naming the city as an additional insured. That request gets made from time to time as well.
Thank you. From a timing standpoint, you might have mentioned it, but when would you see installing the pantry?
I could get you one in 2 days. I have one sitting ready to go. We have 2, well, actually we have 3 ready to go. And as people kind of, like Trinity, they're working on their sanctuary, so we bump them down. But I do have one in reserve because Hannah reached out. It's been a couple months ago. And this build that we got from IMMI, they help build. Gaylor helps build. We've had the kids at Hamilton Heights in their shop class have built. ABC has built. It's a group effort, but you tell me when you want it and I will make sure it's here because Gaylor will help us deliver it.
We probably should have led with that. Emmy has built over 20 pantries. I probably should have led with that one, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
What do you need from the city as far as installation and making it ready for?
Whatever the location would be, we want to make sure, to Cindy's point, we want to make sure about staying out of the prevailing winds. What we've learned, if you set them at the wrong angle and all the food's out of them, they have a tendency to blow over in about 50-mile-an-hour wind. So we can put duck feet on them in order to change their center of gravity. We used to just throw blocks of concrete in, and that idea didn't work long term. Depending on where it's at, then you can use ballast hooks and go down in the ground like they did at the Carmel, at the Boy Scouts did in Carmel. Or we can put an I-beam and actually put an I-beam in the ground and bolt it together. So you can do as much or as little as you want.
Right. I think being between these buildings, I think it'll be fine. It'll be guarded from the wind. I think it'll be fine. And basically, as long as we've got a relatively flat, we've been known to use shims and everything else to level it out. But yeah, we would not ask, we would make sure that it worked.
If there's ever an issue with it, we'd like to get a phone call.
Right.
Because we don't have volunteers here every day. They would be here every few days. So if someone notices something, this happened at Promise Road Elementary. We have one at a grade school, and someone went and took ketchup and shot it all over the parking lot. We were there the next day to clean it up. So if you do notice something that needs attention, reach out to us and we address it.
It's not the norm. Most of the time, people respect what they're for.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do for rodent control?
Well, that's why it's non-perishables. And the food moves so fast that normally it doesn't. Now, the one up in Atlanta, we did have an issue. Someone put about 4 loaves of bread in there, and we didn't catch it for a couple days, and the ants got in. So we do the home defense, we'll spray around, but we've never had any rodent issues at all.
So the rice and the prepackaged meals, we partner with IDES, International Disaster Emergency Services, for some of the protein pack meals. They have to go up higher. That helps avoid the rodents. You'll also see canned goods. The vast majority of what's in there is canned. Ramen, but it's packaged and it'll be on a higher shelf because it's tougher. The rodents just can't get to it. And we'll put pet food, if someone wants to donate, it will go on the bottom shelf. And then from time to time, people will say, hey, I'd like to donate toiletries. And we also have them put it on the bottom shelf to separate it from the food. There's signs in every pantry that said, you know, this is an honor system. Take what you need, give what you can, in Spanish and in English and then in Creole, and some locations saying, check the expiration dates, check all of your packaging, make sure there's nothing torn. If anything's torn, toss it away, don't consume it. And then the instructions of, hey, try to keep them above this level. You still get people that they're good-hearted and they'll put pears or corn or leeks, fresh vegetables, and we have to take it out. Things that come straight from a grocery store, you know, typically we have to take out. Canned goods, packaged goods, cereal, pasta, ramen, canned fruit, that sort of thing. So the rodents can't, it's really, most of it is impervious to the rodents, not all. What isn't, we try to put in a higher shelf.
Our phone number is at the top on the front of the pantry. It's not on these, but it will be on the new ones we're making, where the sign says, take what you need, give what you can. There is a phone number on there. It's a toll-free number, so if anybody has any issues, they can call that number. But you guys can
That's
shoot
a
us a
great question.
text or
We
whatever.
can't eliminate it all,
No.
and then when people do something silly, then
Actually, at the Noblesville School Admin Building, we have it on video that a raccoon was able to open the door through 2 locks, 2 slide locks. So now there's 4 locks on that pantry. But they actually found it on video.
yeah.
But we have that solved now.
Other
We've
questions?
learned a lot along
Anything
the
else we
way.
can answer for you guys?
Thank you. Do I have a motion, I guess?
Motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion made to approve the permission to place an outdoor food pantry on the property here at City Hall was made by Councilor Patton, seconded by Councilor Fry. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric.
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Dick Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Who would we
you.
work through?
Thank you.
With Chris.
With Chris.
Chris,
Okay. Thank you so much, Council.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The next item on the agenda this evening is a report on all money spent at Grand Park in 2023 year-to-date and details of any consulting fees paid to Legacy Sports Group and any contracts they may have. And I believe we have Matt Trinian, Director of Grand Park, has a presentation for us. Is that correct, Matt?
Yes, good evening. Matt Trinian here to report on the agenda item. As far as year-to-date financials, as of today, we pulled these numbers. We have revenues to the total of a little over $2.8 million, expenses to a little bit over $2.1 million. We have invested with the clerk's office $3 million. And this year, in turf projects, we have totaled $1.8 million in capital expenditures. In regards to Legacy Sports Group, you see 22 on the left and 23 on the right. The top line of both is the annual consulting fee broken up into 4 quarterly payments. The second line are sponsorship commissions, which are paid out after we receive the sponsorship revenues. On the third line, in the left section of 2022, William and Legacy Sports Group stepped up at a time where we needed services filled, where we were between contractors, and his team worked to help fill custodial needs that we had on campus. Since then, we have found a company that has done and taken over those responsibilities since. And then for 22, we engaged into agreement with William and Legacy Sports Group to complete a study, and it's called Economic Impact Study. That's one section of the study, but there are 3 other segments, one of which is a facility comparison analysis to other like facilities in the U.S. One is a sponsorship study comparison with other like facilities in the U.S. One was the economic impact, and the other was, no, that was it, those 3 areas. For 2023, the other section was a dollar for dollar transfer. As we are unable to pay directly for security services through our Westfield Police Department, I can't write a check to a officer for their responsibilities above and beyond for an off-duty shift. We had an event at which my team wanted a handful of officers on site for escalation of security services. We worked with William and Legacy to cut the check, and he invoiced us directly with no markup on that. So it was just a transfer of dollars because I can't physically write a check to those officers. As you can see, for 2023, we're 3/4 of the way through, which gets us through the 3rd quarter and completes. We'll pay out the 4th quarter at the end of the 3rd quarter. That concludes the presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Yeah, is there a contract or?
Yes, I sent that along to you guys via email, I think Friday afternoon. You guys should have missed it.
Okay.
That's all right. If you don't have it, I can resend, but that's the 2-year agreement that concludes at the end of this year.
Can you go back to the income statement real quick here? So just a little more in depth. So the 2.8 million, 2.1 million in expenses, how's that compare to last year? And then the invested in capital, does that include the interest payments also on the bonds?
So the capital was cash paid out front, so we didn't bond that project at all. It was cash for the turf project, so that was paid in full with the cash reserve that we had. It was budgeted for and paid for out of cash. 2.8 to 2.1 is about on track to where we were last year. This is given the heavy season, a heavy revenue segment of time. So we're about on par. And again, credit to the clerk's office for the $3 million investment so we can help grow that cash balance and grow that cash base.
So does that include interest payments then also?
On
the bonds?
For what?
As an expense?
For which bonds?
The bonds for Grant Park?
This is operating budget.
Okay.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, sir.
So I read the contract about Legacy's percentage on sponsorships. That looked like we were down quite a bit so far year to date compared to last year. Any comments on that?
Yeah, to date, sponsorship's not quite meeting our goals for the year thus far, but to say that, as we sit here today, we actually just paid some of those invoices for additional sponsorship commissions to Legacy. So it's not quite where we'd like it to be, but it's certainly something that we're working to improve upon.
Do we have anyone else who works with us to secure sponsors, or just Legacy?
Just Legacy.
And then the last question I had, so in the contract, it will roll over for a term of, 3 years or 2 years?
That's if we were to elect to move forward with. As of right now, it concludes at the end of this year. So if we'll, go ahead.
Window, there was like a 6-week, I apologize, I'm not in a place where I can look, but there was like a 6-week period that we'd have to notify Legacy if we move on from them, or else it automatically rolls over. Is that correct?
So those conversations are very fluid as a part of.
But that's in the contract though, right? They get we would have to make a decision if we didn't want to use Legacy within a sooner than later.
That's correct. That's correct.
And automatically roll over about 6 weeks before the end of the year.
That's correct. And candidly, William and I have those discussions frequently in regards to how we'd like to move forward with 2024. There's a lot when it comes to the 24 budget with Grand Park that is in play there, and want to ensure that we're following the right steps to either keep those services as they are vitally important to the operation of the campus, or how we can rework it, or if we elect to not move forward, we would have that discussion with William.
Okay.
Kim, do we have the breakout of the expenses? Was that emailed to us, do you know?
Is there anything specific you're looking for?
Nope, I just want to see that, you know, from start to finish, the revenues, expenses in detail, you know, and the investments, the capital, and then presumably, I assume we have complete financials beyond just the operating piece, right? I mean.
So I think quarterly, we report on the, well, I know quarterly we report on the spreadsheet that we send.
Yeah.
So you should have that. In regards to the bonds,
Yeah, I just want to tie this, I just want to tie these numbers out. Because I look at the quarterly ones that the treasurer sends me. But, I mean, I just want to tie out the numbers.
So as you look at that specifically, when it comes to expenses, capital and the invested $3 million come out of the expenses side. So when you're looking at that report, those are all tied together. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. From the investment standpoint, that $3 million is pulled from our expense line per se in the budget. I just wanted to show operating versus capital versus investment.
Okay, I'll just wait to see those. Yeah, thank you.
I see that the LSG contract, it basically seems to be renewable with a 3% annual increase. And the one I'm looking at was for 21 and 22, and then it just says 3%.
That was a typo. It was 22 and 23.
Okay. Thank you.
That contract was executed to start in 22 and run through the 23 season.
When do you plan on making a decision on re-upping their contract for 2024?
Yeah, that timeline is quickly approaching. So over the next month and a half is kind of that timeline that we've set aside to make that decision.
You wouldn't do it after the budget season, after we approve the budget?
Well, we got to make that decision before that time. I mean, we really need to budget accordingly and plan appropriately. So I'd like to make that decision ahead of time.
What's the advantage of doing that?
Planning appropriately for how we're going to either backfill those responsibilities, or if we're going to move forward, then we can budget appropriately to have that built out as a part of our 24 budget.
I mean, you're aware that there's a big RFP going on at Grand Park, right?
I am aware of that, yes, sir.
Okay.
So that was my question, I guess, Matt, is about the RFP. So, I mean, regardless of whether legacy is the best thing ever or not, I mean, how do we move forward until the RFP business is finalized and taken care of? I mean, what's the plan on that? And, you know, I would assume Scott should have a big say in all of this, but what the new council, everything. So long story short, yeah, we have a budget coming up, but the RFP process not being finished. How do we decide on this without that being wrapped up?
Yeah, so I've put in my preliminary plans for the 24. I'm sorry, I started speaking. I thought you were done. What was that last section, Jake?
Especially since it would be a 2-year contract.
Yeah, so I've built out a budget, or in my preliminary budget for 2024, it is as if we were operating as normal or as we are this year. But even within that, there are discussions happening to see what is the best route for 24, and does that include legacy or does that not? Either way, we're charged with still operating the campus as if nothing is happening in the RFP process. So we have a job and a responsibility to perform. And all of the services that William and his team perform on our behalf are vitally important to our operation.
I guess the concern I would have, and I think Jake was kind of alluding to that, if we sign this contract for 2 more years and then we lease out the park, I mean, I have no idea where this is going. I've not heard any details. We're just now hand tying the next operator of the park with another contract they may or may not want.
Which is a problem right now anyways.
I
You see how
understand.
it's all piling up, right?
Yeah, I totally understand. I do.
So I know you don't have the answer to this question, but I'll just throw this out there. Where are we with the RFP process, and how much longer is that possibly going to be dragged along?
Can't talk about it.
Can't talk about it. Excellent answer.
Thanks. And there is, I mean, Matt alluded to it, there's a 120-day non-renewal on the legacy contract, so that's why there's a timing issue. And of course, there are discussions to be had, right? One strategy is to notice non-renewal and then have a discussion with William about a month-to-month or a year-to-year or whatever. There are avenues to pursue this that aren't take all or take it or leave it.
So we could do a month-to-month relationship moving forward.
That's up to William, but I mean, that's an option to
Okay.
negotiate with, so you're not pursuing it long-term or, you know, it's not the only avenue.
You looked like you got something to say there, William.
William Knox, Legacy Sports Group, and I appreciate the interest relative to our agreement. And as Matt mentioned, we've not gotten into the heart of our discussions, but part of our initial discussions were that we would stay on board as long as we were needed. It was not our intent to handicap this council or the administration as you pursue these RFP endeavors. Obviously, that will require an amendment to the existing agreement and/or a whole new agreement altogether. So I think those conversations are what we're going to have in advance of him making his final decision.
Seems to me like that needs to be
Before,
happening immediately, if not already taking place. That way we can figure out, frankly, the albatross around our neck with the RFP process. That's got a life of its own that's just incredibly disappointing.
Counselors, any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Matt. Moving on to old business. First item of old business this evening is ordinance 23-08, establishing a Department of Parks and Recreation and Board. This had a council introduction on May 8th and is up for adoption consideration this evening. Chris McConnell is going to provide us with a quick overview of where we're at this point.
Again, so the vision behind this ordinance is to create a Parks Department and then more importantly, create a Parks Board that would help guide us in the future and then more importantly, open the door to an immense amount of additional funding through federal and state sources. Again, I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Comments, counselors?
I know we had discussed having some concerns about how the board members are appointed and that, you know, it's strictly, of course, mayor's option, but we were hoping that we as a council could have some kind of input into that. And we now have this great system on our website where people can apply for different boards and commissions. It'd be really, really nice to have people apply for this, have the council forward a list. You know, we need 4 people, maybe we forward 8, 10 names, and perhaps then mayor chooses from that list. I'm just trying to think of a nice way that we all win here, if that's doable.
I would have to defer to Manny. I know that the way this is written is based strictly on Indiana code. I don't have an answer, unfortunately, for you, Cindy. I do know that there are several members of the community. One of the stipulations of being on a parks board is you have special interest or experience in parks. I know there are several members of the community who have expressed interest, one of which was the chief of staff for DNR for 10 years, who's very interested, has retired, and is a very interested community member in being on the board. Other than that, there are several other members that have experience in being in Parks and Recreation that would be interested, that have expressed interest. As far as your idea, I don't have a good answer to that. I would defer to Manny and the mayor, obviously.
Yeah, like I emailed everybody the day after the last meeting, the appointive powers are what they are, it's in the statute. But that doesn't, in my mind, prohibit some sort of application process or if the council wants to float additional names.
I mean, it would still be mayor choosing.
Yeah, you don't have a point of power and you can't have it, but something, recommendations or whatever, I don't think it's a problem. It just can't be limited to your recommendations alone. I guess that's the issue. Recommendations can come from Chris, they can come from an application, they can come from you, and ultimately the mayor would appoint. That is perfectly fine.
I'm just going to reiterate my comment from last time. Typically, we're already in the budget season. We're already looking at budgets. We have a new city council coming in. We have a new mayor coming in. We've yet to see anything on the budget. We haven't seen a budget for the new Department of Parks and Recreation. And this is not, I mean, again, we don't have to have a Department of Parks and Recreation to have a board to get this funding. So I don't want to keep creating yet another department where we then assign people, and then typically, and the reason we actually had, we asked about some of the Grand Park information is because we did that very thing. We peeled some pieces off and we said, hey, we're going to save money. And then we backfilled the entire thing and spent the same amount of money in Grand Park. So I don't want the same thing to happen here. We're in budget season. I don't think we should actually establish a Parks and Recreation Board until we see the budget, because I can't imagine approving it without seeing the budget first.
So again, excuse me, the Parks Department already exists. The dollars are already incorporated in Public Works. The money is going to come out of Public Works into a Parks budget. Regardless of what happens here, we are dividing that out for this budget season. We're in the process, we being the Clerk Treasurer's Office, are in the process of establishing those numbers. Manny's helping them with that. So you will see it broken out, but this is all very new. In the last few weeks, they've got some processes to figure out, but as we introduce the budget, you'll see the Parks Department separately. But again, not new money that's already in the Public Works Department that will just go under a new appropriation number.
Yeah, and don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I'm actually opposed to having one, but what you just explained is exactly what was explained to us on the Grand Park before, and then we created the Legacy Sports Group went out and we said we were going to save the money because the money was already being spent. I remember that. The money was already being spent. We peeled it off and then we backfilled all the positions and spent the money twice.
So
That's exactly what
we're
happened.
not entering into a consultant contract here, so I don't see how those two things relate, but there's not a new group of people. The people already work for the city of Westfield.
Got it. Department of Parks, Recreation. It's already in the Board of Public Works. Let's say it's $1 million. We peel that out of Department of Public Works, right? And then we go back and we spend the $1 million on people. We backfill it with additional costs. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Is
we'll
it
have
gonna
it broken
happen?
out for you so you can see the two
Maybe it
different
won't
pieces.
happen, but for us to vote, or for me to vote on a new Department of Parks and Recreation without seeing a budget, there is no way I would get behind that. Because I think we don't, and with all due respect, we don't do a very good job in the operational side of understanding our expenses and controlling our expenses anyways. So
Okay.
that's my opinion.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, can I have a motion on ordinance 23-08?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 23-08.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion made to approve by Counselor Willis, seconded by Counselor Spillier. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
No?
Scott Fry,
No.
Troy Patton,
No.
Joe Edwards,
No.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spillier.
Yes.
Motion fails 3-4.
I would bring it up again. Just to reiterate, I would bring it up again after we have a budget, and it does not preclude us from actually putting together a board and actually going out and still seeking the money from the state. Simple as that. I mean, but I would put together a budget first, show everybody the budget, and then bring it up again.
Next item this evening, ordinance 23-11, investment policy of the city of Westfield. This item had a council introduction on June 12th. It's up for adoption consideration this evening. This ordinance authorizes the clerk treasurer to deposit, invest, and reinvest city funds according to state law and adopts investment policy. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding this ordinance?
Just one question. I don't know if anyone is necessarily here that wants to answer it. There was a provision in there about 2-year maximum on an investment on the schedule. I can't remember exactly how it was termed. I think it said we could, I'm trying to pull it up, that we could go and approve something to make it up to 5. And I was wondering if that is something that we're currently doing? And
Whatever the limitation is, it's statutory, so it just passes through. I don't remember what it was 4 or 5, but whatever it is, it's state statute limitation, it's not ours. So presumably we would have to follow it already.
so there was no change in terms of what we are doing compared to the Indiana legislation? Not,
It's a saying.
I didn't know if there was room to make it more strict, less strict, or, just in terms of what we approve here.
Yeah, from that standpoint, from where the money goes, what institutions you can use, and the duration, that is all state statute. That is all kind of set in stone. It has been for a little while.
But there was that one provision in there that if it was going to be more than 2 years, that basically the council had to authorize going beyond 2 years. And I'm sorry, I can't seem to pull it up right now.
You're talking about the maturity?
Thank you.
Says the city's investments must have a stated final maturity of not more than 2 years pursuant to Indiana Code 513956. Because of inherent difficulty in forecasting cash flow, a portion of the investment portfolio should be continuously invested in readily available investments such as local government pools, money market funds, or overnight repurchase agreements to ensure that appropriate liquidity is maintained in order to meet ongoing obligations. If it's more than 2 years, but not more than 5, the city may adopt an ordinance appointing and authorizing the investment officer. I mean, I personally rather keep it under 2. I mean, just because of fluidity in the investment world, but that's just me. And I'm not so sure you can actually do 5-year maturities, can you, Manny? I mean, because I thought the Indiana Code said you can't, and if you do, it has to, or am I incorrect on that? It's under investment constraints.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now, thanks.
I mean, it would make sense if there was an opportunity to have it come forward individually and pass an ordinance at that time specifically for one opportunity, if you will. maybe instead of us having an ordinance, I'm just putting it out there for discussion.
So, I mean, presumably if that cash, I mean, just thinking in terms of, you know, whoever's, here's a good example. Andy and Scott, let's say nobody runs against Scott. Scott becomes the next mayor and Andy's the mayor today. And he says, hey, I want to push to get those things invested for 5 years. Scott comes in, he's hamstrung, rates change, and then he has to sell investments because of change in, you know, just change in interest rates, which has actually happened here recently and actually has caused constraints on the banking system. I don't know if that's a really good idea. I mean, you should have a fluid office where you could say, hey, we have these assets. Oh gosh, I don't want to sell them because now we're underwater because we took a 5-year maturity on something and rates went from, you know, 2 to 5 and we lost, you know, 22% of our principal.
So with this, it's 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to come back to the well, to the council if you want to make it more.
Okay.
Right now, if you pass this, it's a 2 years.
And for what it's worth, the mayor doesn't have input into how things are invested. It's all held within the clerk's office. So they're managing investment there.
Yeah.
So the scenario of the mayor hamstrunging Scott can't exist. It could exist within the clerk's office, but the admin department doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, but the mayor could presumably would work with the clerk treasurer to say, hey, we're investing money in a certain way.
Yeah,
right?
certainly. I hope
that
that's
would be
our
normal.
future. Yeah, I don't disagree.
We got a question. Yeah, so with this, you're adopting 2 years. And they have to come back to the council to make it longer.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Cindy? Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Motion to approve?
Do I hear a motion to approve? Made by Cindy Spillier. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilor Spillier, seconded by Councilor Fry to approve ordinance 23-11. Would you please call the roll?
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes?
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spillier,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
We have one item of new business this evening. That would be ordinance 23-13, prohibiting the use of public records for commercial purposes. This item has a council introduction this evening, would be up for adoption consideration on July 10th. This item was put together here by the clerk treasurer's office. I believe Manny has reviewed it, and it's a basic statute that most other cities have in place.
Yeah, it's, among other things, permits the city to reject and prohibit public records requests where they're solely used for commercial purposes. You get a lot of data aggregators and other companies that submit those kind of requests, and I think the clerk's office probably put this together because of how burdensome it is to comply with them. Because they're over decades, and it takes a while to pull all that together.
I think that's the case.
That's my assumption of why this is.
As I understand, that is the case. So, again, this is having a council introduction this evening, so we've got a couple weeks, counselors, to look through it, ask any questions. I encourage you to do so. Check with the clerk's office, and this item then would be up for adoption consideration on the 10th. That concludes our new business for this evening. Kevin, do we have any guests who would like to address them? Thank you, thank you. Kim, any clerk treasurer's comments this evening?
No, I would just say that the portal on Westfield residents that are interested in doing boards, different boards and participation. Currently, we have nobody for the Parks Board because it's a new, but if you're interested, please go to the website and fill that out. We've had a lot of response otherwise.
Thank you. Thank City councilor comments. Councilor Speljerk, any reports?
No, I was not at the APC, but I hear there was only one consent agenda item, and that was for the depot at Spring Mill, I believe, Phase 2?
That's correct. That was it?
Yes.
Just one consent.
Just real quick, Finance Committee meeting, we will have one in July, once we have the June 30th numbers. And is what I would ask, Kim, if you could just make a note of this and have Misha pull together the last 6 months of 2022 separately from the actual budget, and the 2023, so we can actually start the budgeting process even within the Finance Committee meeting and start talking about different things. And I think that'd be advantageous.
There was one more thing I had, if that's okay. I had mentioned before, I believe a few weeks ago maybe, that I was hoping that we could meet with the RDC about our project list, the capital projects, and get some coordination maybe. So I was hoping to do that rather soon if we could. And my guess is we would need several of the staff members as well as the RDC and all of us to be available for that. We likely won't have a second meeting in July. And so I was thinking that'd be a great time to do that. That's July 24th. And I thought it'd be very handy if we could do a combo meeting and probably work out best to do it at City Services, around the big meeting table there. I just see that working out quite well if we could do that. Just want to throw that out there, that I'd like to see that done.
I think that's a great suggestion. Councilors?
I think it's a good idea.
Good idea. Mr. Mayor, is your thought? Okay, all right. That being the case, we'll try to arrange that. Okay, and we'll shoot for that second meeting in July 24th.
Would it be a consolidation of the RDC meeting in July, or would it be a separate working session that you'd have to notice, or what would?
I'm
What would be the
assuming,
agenda items, just to give Jeremy and everybody some guidance on how long to stay? Because if it would be a combination that would have their own agenda, then you'd come in trying to kind of work all that out, manage resources.
why don't we work that out? Why don't, let's discuss that. I don't think we're prepared to
Okay,
lay that out here at this point, but,
got it.
okay. Any other comments, councilors? Hearing none. Mr. Mayor? Hearing none, then, let's call the, adjourn the meeting at 10:08.
Oh, yours? Didn't